I've been making content both here and elsewhere for some time, and it was never something I specifically went into expecting to get anything out of, whether it was recognition or fans. The fact that I have either is quite surprising to this day. I know everyone says that, but it's true. From my perspective, it has always been a matter of me wanting to create out of a passion for it, just for fun, to put it simply. So while personal video to this degree isn't something I'm fond of, frankly, as these never gave me enjoyment, it is more so for people who really have given me a lot. So I hope to give a better understanding of where I've been mentally with all of this. Now, I want to start with how I began on YouTube, because I believe it's important to have that perspective, for the reasonings as to why I stopped. Once again, to put it simply, I started YouTube and by extension, streaming, as a means of enjoyment. It was a hobby, and I still see it that way to this day. At the time, I had just finished high school. I was working 9 to 5 and going to school from 6 to 10. I was constantly stressed, constantly miserable, and make no mistake, this was, at the time, a situation I wanted. To be working on my degree while having a full-time job. To actually pull everything off and then hate it was really defeating. Suddenly, I was questioning where I was going in life, and in my free time, I started making these videos. Things took off pretty surprisingly, and as a result, I got to the point where I could pay off the cheap rent I had to make monthly to continue living at home while focusing on school. That particular time when things were going smoothly, I was pretty excited. I felt that despite me changing my direction in life to some degree, things could work out. I do look back on it fondly, but it didn't last long, as my folks did not approve of me doing this sort of thing. I come from a very traditional, sheltered family, so it was causing a lot of friction. And then when my parents found out I was effectively not straight, as a result of them looking into my life more and more, it led to me being kicked out. So while I was doing YouTube early on, I was bouncing around being homeless at points, living at a friend's. I had no real idea where my life was going, but I put everything into this because it was really important to me. I needed to put myself into something. Before that, it seemed like an unimaginable feat. The idea that this could become anything substantial. Again, I never intended to get any sort of spotlight on me. In a lot of ways, I don't even want that aspect now. I have always struggled with people socially as I am autistic. So just the idea that part of my life became so involved with people interacting with me was unbelievable. And it became important to me that I kept this going, no matter how bad it got, because it meant so much to me. It was what was keeping me going in a lot of ways, despite the timing of it being awful. I did pick myself up, and I'm proud that I was able to do that. But as I was finally finding my footing, more issues began to arise. As time went on, that enjoyment I felt became more and more compromised. Not as a result of making videos or streaming itself, I still love those to this day. But around 2018, I made a video venting my bad experiences in a certain community, in a similar manner to this video. Obviously, this was a place I turned to during my situation I talked about earlier, and I didn't have the best experiences there either. They mirrored ones in my religious upbringing, particularly. So talking about this situation as well as how it mirrored my old was something therapeutic, and tied very heavily into that message of the video, that I'm my own person and I was done letting people decide what or who I was. It was never meant as a sweeping statement. There are some things I wish I worded better. I would change how aggressive some of it came off, and in some cases my opinion has evolved over time. I certainly get not agreeing with me at every junction. However, these are my personal experiences, and I strongly believe that was made clear. That video came from a place of confusion and how frustrated it made me feel, to not have my feelings and experience known. It was to vent these things and be at peace with them. But since then I started receiving harassment, even from people that were once my friends in those communities because I spoke negatively, I guess. As this stirred in the background, it became something I just got used to, but in 2019, with the release of my trap video, the one about anime boys, things got so much worse. From its release in particular, you can clearly see my schedule become very spread out, with more time between each upload, until it's gotten to the point where it's at now. Things had gotten so absurd, especially with one group of people in particular. However, the most stressful aspect of this for me both was and is how it affects everyone close to me. Let's take my roommate as an example, my once girlfriend. She has BPD, right? So when we were dating, they would often try to push her over the edge, both creating and taking advantage of her suicidal episodes. Most of this was deleted for her own mental health, so I can only show so much, but this put a tremendous strain on the both of us. and these actions are just awful on their own. Nor was this an isolated incident either. In a similar manner, a girl I was seeing for a few months had received the exact same sort of harassment. She did not have this mental condition, mind you, but that doesn't make the fact that she was harassed for seeing me any better. And upon things being broken off between us, this group would begin trying to get dirt on me, as well as stuff like intimate pictures. Anything they could possibly use against me. It's all so fucking creepy. The stalkerish nature is absurd. One example I recall recently is when I exchanged some flirtatious comments with a girl publicly, and to clarify, it's not that I was even that close to her, they were just someone I had spoken to a few times. These individuals then proceeded to try and get information out of her and attempt to turn her against me, a tactic they seem to try and use on anyone who won't comply. Now, I'm not one to save screenshots of random threats I've gotten, because quite frankly, it's constant, and I'd rather not see it for my own well-being. But as I have for this section, I will show examples whenever talking about a specific instance. Because with this group non-stop stalking me, I began eventually keeping examples. However, to prove a point, I am doing the final run-through of the script on the 6th of January. I can simply log into Twitter, go to my mentions, and yes, I can find an immediate example. So when I say constant, I do mean constant. It's less about, oh, I think every message is serious, because I'm aware someone will try to spin my words as that. It's just taxing. And when I'm at the point of having people who are serious about trying to ruin my life, all of it just becomes so much more draining. I just wanted this cleared up before we continue back to the specifics of what I was referring to. I've seen things ranging from suicide pools on me and my friends to just wild accusations about me. Let's take the most public example as a starting point. When I made the trap video, there was this big thread based on how I harassed the pedantic romantic, a YouTuber that my video was in partial response to. And this built up so much traction, spun into a bunch of other things, but the humorous part of it all was that me and her became friends after the video. Like we've taken shots at each other's opinions, but because of all those interactions, we became close. They've made fun of this thread themselves. We never attacked each other as individuals, very obviously. Everything about the harassment aspect of this was completely fabricated, and I even had proof at the time that people were trying to get all of my accounts across these platforms false flagged, as well as saying some awful stuff about me on top of that. I want it stated that she didn't condone those actions, but I was not the one harassing anybody. I was the one receiving it. Of course, the account was deleted, despite this post still being up covered in false information to this day, another reoccurring theme. But that's what it always is. Sure, there is something that actually happened as a base at times, but everything around it gets falsified and morphed. Doesn't stop at just stuff like this either. I've heard accusations that I've gone to cons and abused people. It's on the tier of those I met ex-celebrity at a grocery store memes, but these people actually push it as a real narrative. There were points where some of the wild things I've heard, I would try to engage with. This is what happened, so logically this couldn't. This is made up, here's why. But I've had people flat out admit that they didn't care what is and isn't true because I deserved the treatment regardless. That's one of the worst aspects, is people just go along with it, right? It doesn't matter because it's about who it is and nothing else. That's probably not a foreign concept to most of you listening, whether you participated in yourself, had it done to you, or witnessed any of the numerous dramas that happen to creators, or hell, average individuals at this point. It never really feels like anyone cares beyond using moral standings to get rid of someone they don't want around. Like, one of the reasons I engaged it, at any point, was because I'm someone who always wants to be understood, and I want to understand others. Even if I don't care for something or someone, my course of action is to ignore it, wanting nothing to do with it. This seems to be a rarity though. The opposite, harassing and trying to destroy what you don't like, whether it's a person or product, feels like the standard. My hyperfixation on being understood could be autism or just a trait of mine I don't know. But it's something I basically had to unlearn, that some people just don't want to or care to understand. That kind of sucks. I mentioned being friends earlier with someone who has a pretty different opinion to me, on a topic I feel strongly on. That's not an oddity for me. I want to be able to talk to people, to have friends with different viewpoints, though that's apparently weird. Getting back to it though, the people I deal with are insane, even the smaller stuff. These individuals often try to push another narrative in conjunction, that I was never pink-pilled, as well as that I'm transitioning in secret, and it's all a grift or something. Everything has been made up, basically. Even though, if you looked, there are people I've interacted with that do admit to putting me in that situation. I've never felt the need to call them out specifically, because call-outs, quite frankly, are usually about revenge or something similar. And me talking about my story was never about that. There would be no benefit to putting those people in that position, other than harming them. It was never about the big bad LGBTs or whatever these individuals want to make it out to be. I never said anything like that. My story was about me moving on, and this vengeful nature that everyone seems to sit in isn't moving on from the past. In some of the cases, the people that harmed me, it wasn't something I would say was done with malicious intent. Let's dive deeper into that for a moment. In both situations, whether it was my home life or the circles I ended up in after, they thought they were helping me. My story is merely a warning to be careful, to let people figure themselves out, not push them down a path when confused. Since then, I've had so many people say I've helped them, whether it's them realizing they can just dress the way they want, without fitting into someone else's box, or on the flip side, that hearing me talk about my situation helps some people realize they are definitely trans or any other identity, and that's all great. However, those who make the claims I talk about also say I was the spark that, no exaggeration, started a war. This is one that always sticks out to me because I've seen it echoed so many times, and it's such an absurd statement. There is no war between gender nonconforming and trans people. I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. Hypothetically, let's say a female told you about how she was abused by a man. Would your natural response be that she should have said nothing because it'll start a war of the sexes? Maybe some of these people would. I don't know. I've been told it doesn't matter how real my situation is because of the possibility that it can be used against them. And it's like, yeah, people misrepresent me all the time. I don't think that means my voice gets to be silenced. I'm sure I'm repeating myself a lot, but I hate that people play teams. It's like if you identify one way, or you believe in this one thing, then you're the good guy, no matter what. Or you're the bad guy, no matter what. It's so frustrating. Good and bad people exist everywhere. The problems I talked about in that video don't stop at any one group. Even the team I'm apparently on, I can tell you, a lot of people have the same vapid issues I take problems with, and I can't stand them either. It's never about a group, it's about the individual. A wolf in sheep's clothing is a common term for a reason. The creeper male feminist is something people make fun of for a reason. The world's not so simple. If you can take anything from when I talk about these topics, it shouldn't be that all religious people are evil, or that all LGBT people are evil. I've never said such things, and I am both. It's just that bad people who seek to control even the most basic stuff about you, exist. And that's who I'm speaking out against no matter what label they slap to themselves. It's the actions, not the label. Honestly, the crazy thing is most people watching this, basically only dedicated fans of my content, I imagine, are who will see this. Yet, most are still hearing what I've went through for the first time. I've walked away from both points. I'm living my life. The people who were on the other side of those situations have long moved on too, for the most part. I've only ever talked about it in circumstances like these because I do feel I'm owed a defense when accused of things. I'm not the one trying to pick a fight. The people pushing some narrative that this is a battle, that someone has a problem with the other's identity, is not me. I want everyone to be respected. No matter if I dress or look effeminate at times, I'm still a man. That changes nothing about me as a person, and I afford everyone else the same for how they view themselves. But going back to the video that started all of this, these types that harass me, they will still say I'm closeted, secretly taking transition drugs, and anything else to deny my identity. I'm not saying I need to be validated by these people. Don't mistake my reasoning for bringing this up, but that's just the reality of it, that I'm not trying to deny anyone. It just often feels like the people who say this never exists are also the ones doing it themselves. But it all comes back to the stalkerish nature of it being so exhausting. I mean, I have had normal stalkers and people that get weird about pushing themselves on me. That is largely part of why I stopped interacting with people online in meaningful ways. But that stuff doesn't compare to the weird, what I would call, hate stalkers, the type we've been talking about through this video. It gave me ludicrous paranoia at times, worrying about everything I had ever said, whether it can be misconstrued or taken out of context, then used to match something else to spin a brand new narrative. I felt I couldn't even joke around with friends without worrying about the possibility of them getting harassed. I showed earlier I so much as talked to a girl and she had those people on her. I far and away reached the point of saying fuck it when it comes to joking around. I've accepted it's inevitable. and I basically went in the opposite direction as a result. But it's still such an awful situation to be in. I'm just not sure I understand it. Not that I'm some completely innocent angel. I'm pretty openly edgy, or I say messed up stuff for fun, especially now. I know my views on not caring about the shit people say or do despite having a following is problematic to weirdos online. That's a big no-no these days, to just want to be left alone. And it's not like I'm some political YouTuber trying to rally a movement through myself, or some big name on a platform. So it's weird to me that I have to deal with so much of this. And maybe that's just how things are now. I avoid this stuff as much as possible, because again, I don't give a shit about the personal life of some e-celeb, but it's still, every day, there's some new drama or accusation that just ends up not being accurate, and I know you're all more than used to it at this point. It's outrageous, but it's as if people understand how easy it is to get away with this now. Even stuff not pertaining to a specific person. I'm friends with some people at a publishing studio. Recently they announced one of their titles was getting a Switch port, and because of it having big anime boob in it, they received so many countless threats, attacks, you name it. The big game sites that usually cover harassment over the littlest comment tried sweeping it under the rug, saying it was fake, a publicity stunt, because it ran counter to the narrative they wanted, who they want the bad guys to be. A lot of the time, that's all any of this is. It's less about what's actually right or wrong and more what the person talking wants you to think is right or wrong. Maybe that is the most obvious thing I could tell you. However, I had an upbringing where I was never allowed to be myself. Then it was the individuals that I truly believed were going to save me, telling me I had to be a certain way. I'm not having it anymore. I can self-reflect and say, maybe that's why I can be edgy sometimes. But I am so against bowing down to being told I have to be a certain way, when I am not hurting anyone, breaking any laws, or anything. I stream Souls-like games while posting about whatever anime character I currently want to bang. That's who I am. I'm not changing for anyone. I want to be a good person. To me, that is treating everyone with kindness. But I don't want to be some morally upstanding, wholesome guy either. I never claimed I was, nor do I want to be. Because I'm not by anyone's definition. You can't convince me to be any other way than who I am. The stress of dealing with this has weighted on me for so long, and it's made the idea of pursuing these things not fun. With each upload, I felt stressed because anytime my name was swinging around, this got worse. And as I said at the start, it being fun was and is all that matters to me. That's why I did this and will continue to. This video in a lot of ways is the exact opposite of how I've always wanted to steer things. Perhaps that's why it took so long for me to sit down and think it out. I don't want to talk about my personal life, experiences, drama. I don't want to hear about yours or anyone else's, quite frankly, either. The only thing I'm concerned about are the things I enjoy. Sure, controversies around that I am more than happy to partake and defend, you name it. But I simply do not care beyond that. I've accepted these people will never give up, but that also doesn't mean it ever has to bother me again, that I have to validate it. I don't know how normal this stuff is. I am perfectly fine accepting that maybe I wasn't cut out for dealing with the spotlight, but I love doing the things I do. I've improved myself, my life, so much from where it used to be, and I'm trying really hard to focus on that and to shoot higher. I've been done letting this stuff pick at me for a while and hinder my progress. However, I at least want something on the topic with some finality, and to say it out loud, as to why I never engaged these things, as well as an explanation for those who have been so kind enough to support me, whether that's through views or anything greater. So that's the video.